Good evening, everyone. I am Juhi Jalota. I secured 122nd rank this year in the civil services exam. Uh, and I'm here to talk about how I began my journey, when I began my journey, what all hiccups I faced all this while, and what all changes I did this year. So in the next few minutes, I'll be talking about all these things with you. Uh, so I started preparing for this exam in the year 2014. I moved down to Delhi. I joined Sriram's IAS, and 1 year, about 10 months of preparation I did with them. I attended their classes regularly and built a very strong base, knowledge base with almost all the core subjects, be it polity, geography, history, everything. So all that I studied there. And after 10 months, I moved back to my city in Ludhiana. And the 3-4 months of time that I had in between for my prelims, I prepared from there. So the first time I wrote my prelims, I got through the prelims. And what I did was, and what I found to be of most help was repeated revisions. I was revising after I'd done my coaching here in Delhi, after I'd attended all the classes and understood all the basics of subjects that are required for this exam. I went back and I revised them again and again, again and again. And in that period of 4-5 months, I think I must have done about 7-8 revisions, which is really important because it is those revisions that ultimately crystallize all the knowledge that you acquire in that span of a year. So those revisions I did, and I was also writing tests. I was writing mock tests, prelim mock tests for different coaching institutes. I would buy those tests from the market and attempt them at my place offline. All that sort of helped me in getting through the prelim in the first attempt. Then a mistake, however, I did in the first attempt was not thinking about my mains when I was preparing for prelims. So the entire 1-year time span, I was preparing, I was studying, and although I had been writing answers every day for the coaching institute, but in my mind, somewhere, I was not oriented towards the mains. I thought to myself that let me just clear prelims first, and then I'll take a look at mains. But it was after I wrote my prelims when that I realized that I barely have 3-4 months for my mains, and that is not too much time, and I had to bug up. And I was at a complete loss because I had information. I had information enough to get me through prelims, but then I didn't know sort of how to use it to write answers in mains. So that was a problem, and then I went running to different institutes and joined their mains test series. And I did it online because I was based in Ludhiana, so I was taking online test series from there. So I wrote those tests from there and worked on whatever feedbacks I got. I did my best. I did it all very seriously, and first attempt I got through with about 688 marks in mains. I got an interview call. I went for my interview. Again, I was quiet, and I would say this, in the first attempt, I was quite naive. I wasn't perhaps too aware of how difficult this exam is as to what to do to be in the final list. And I was perhaps taking it all a little too casually. So I didn't really prepare hard for my interview, and I did not get through the interview. And that was something I had not expected, so that was a shocker to me, but I guess it had to be like that because I had not prepared well. Again, the second year, I decided to attempt, and I continued with the same set of things I was doing because the first year I'd got through my mains, and I assumed that whatever I've been doing, I'm doing it correct. All I need is to push through. And that's exactly what I did. So my marks did witness a jump from 688 to 782, but that year, cutoffs were really high. And I was not doing any comparative analysis. I was not looking at what others around me were doing, and so I wasn't even aware of how the level of competition is growing up every day. So the second time, I didn't make it through the mains. It was this, it was then that I decided to rework my whole approach to this exam. Then I had to think as to what I'm doing wrong and where I need to work. So now by this time, I had with me all the knowledge base that I had acquired in the last 3 years. I needed to now see as to how to use it in mains and how to make sure that it fetches me marks. So I'll now go into details about my strategies here, subject-wise, and then I'll also talk about how I came across mains guidance program at ForumIAS. I joined them and how it was of help to me. So let me first talk about whatever I did for my subjects, and then I'll come to forum's advice and how it was of help. So talking about essays, the first 2 attempts that I gave, I took no essay coachings, and I thought that I'll manage essays on my own. I'm quite good at writing them, and I don't need any formal guidance for it. And I didn't score so well in the first 2 attempts. The scores this year are yet to come, so I don't know, but I changed a lot this year. So for essays, I made sure that I read others' essays that Forum was uploading. I read their essays, and so that sort of gave me an insight into what others were doing. And the best essays that Forum had uploaded had a lot of quotes in them. They had data in them to support their arguments. They were making good arguments at that, and they had exceptionally well beginnings in the form of conversations or anecdotes. And this, Ayush sir had taken a session on essay writing. He had talked about all this then also. So this time for my essays, I did whatever they had suggested. I prepared a data bank to keep data on. They'd actually shared a list of about 40 expected topics. And that too, they had segregated into different sections on education or on politics. So some, different sections, they'd all done it. So I started collecting data and quotes relevant to those areas and memorizing them, revising them again and again. And in my final essays, I also made sure that I would begin it in the manner he had suggested, either with an anecdote or with a conversation. He told us that these are the most marks-fetching strategies, so I did this. And I put in a lot of quotes in there. I put in data in there. I was quite happy with my attempt at essay this time. I was prepared, unlike the previous 2 times. Coming to my GS1 paper, see, you will be following all the traditional books that people follow from Spectrum to NCRTs, from Bipin Chandra. There are more that I am, as of now, not naming. So all those books, make notes from them. But then when it comes to writing the exam, Forum's MGP made it a point to tell me that presentation is very important. And GS1 is a paper that gives you a lot of scope to draw diagrams, which is something I'd not done in my first 2 attempts. So repeatedly writing tests for ForumIAS at MGP, they sort of compelled me into drawing diagrams for GS1, and I did that. So wherever I felt a diagram could be drawn or anything could be highlighted, I made it a point that I do that in my papers. I did it in my mocks. I also did it in the final paper. Then for GS2, you study ARCs, you study D.D. Basu, Lakshmikant, other books that I am perhaps forgetting. But my scores in GS2 in the first 2 attempts had been consistently low. So I was still not confident with this subject after having read so extensively on this. And then there was this lecture that Ayush sir was taking, and he had asked us to go through Empuri's notes on GS2, and I fetched that notebook from the market and went through it. That was also of a lot of help because therein, no, I didn't get the original notes. A photostated notebook I got, and those I read. I had to order it online. I ordered it from Flavido. From there, that was the only website that I got it from. Um, so how was it of help here? Those notes discussed all the issues involved in various sections of our constitution and perhaps solutions to them. And they also had linked ARC suggestions in between. So I found almost every other text that we read for GS2 sort of crystallized at one place. And all the ARCs have a lot of excess information also, which I still had it in my head. But Empuri's notes gave me a clear idea as to how to use that information. That is where it was of help. For GS3, I read economic survey and I read Niti Aayog's documents. I was also reading whatever arguments about schemes or initiatives in the newspaper. You go through the syllabus, and then I had actually prepared notes section-wise. So, for instance, if I talk about infrastructure, there's energy, there's ports, there's airways, there's roadways, and I prepared notes about everything. And I remember my mentor here had asked me to to have ready-made answers to things. And this is something I was doing for all other papers also, but I'm talking here of particularly GS3. So what I did was, let's come back to infrastructure. This is just one topic. I was doing it for all the topics. So for infrastructure, what I did was, say let's pick up energy. Now, energy, I sort of raked whatever information I had through whatever sources and gathered whatever issues we had, whatever data I had on energy scenario in the country, put it in one place, analyzed it, and again figured out what are the issues and challenges in the sector, what all government initiatives have been in this area, what are the loopholes in there, and what measures can we take. Have there been suggestions in various government documents or texts regarding those loopholes within this sector or not? And I put everything at one place. And all these ideas about organizing my notes, I picked up from Prajit's article that I happened to read after having written my prelims this year. So, and I was organizing, again I'm saying this, all my subject notes in this manner. For ethics, again, ethics, I changed my way of writing. I used to write in the form of essays, and consistently my score in ethics had only been around 100 or so. It wasn't really good. Here again, the feedback that I got from Forum was quite specific and quite helpful. So when I wrote the test the first time, in my first 2 attempts, let me rephrase this. So when I was writing tests earlier, in my first and second attempts, I was scoring less, but with just a remark that you need to improve. And that didn't help me at all. I wouldn't know as to how my ethics answers could be improved, because ethics, we all assume that it's too personal and it comes from the heart. So it's difficult to work on such a vague guideline which says improve on it. That wasn't helping me. So when I landed here at Forums and wrote my first ethics test here, what they did was, in my answer copy, for every answer, they had either drawn a flowchart or given me points or given me sources telling me specifically that this is how your answer could have been written and it would have been better. So wherever my content required a change, they told me so, and they wrote it all in specifics. This is what you could have added, or this is how you should have written it. This is a flow chart that you could have drawn. This is a diagram that you could have drawn, and they drew it in my copy. So when I saw a few such diagrams, I understood in time that this is how I should approach writing for ethics papers, and it will fetch me marks. So that is what I did for the 4th paper. So now that I've spoken for all these GS papers, I'll again sum up how this year, what all changes I did this year. One was essay. The fact that I'd not taken essay seriously in the first 2 times, I changed that this year, and I followed essay seriously. And this was one thing that I changed. The other was changing the institute again because I wanted specific feedbacks, better feedbacks. I was not sure of the evaluations that I was getting in the first 2 attempts. So I found ForumIAS. I was lucky enough to actually come across them, and they'd actually had just one batch before me. So I wasn't really sure as to whether to join them or not. But I took that leap of faith, and I'd call it a leap of faith only because with just one batch, I really wasn't sure. So I joined them, and they were offering personal mentorship, which I made full use of. I discussed almost all the areas that I found difficulties with, areas where I wasn't scoring good marks with forums mocks. And I discussed all my answers with my mentors, asked them where I can improve. And I'm telling you guys that they gave me very specific inputs. They also made me go through best copies. Others who'd scored better than me, they made me see their copies as to see what they're doing and what I'm not doing, and implement them in my answers if I can do that. So this is another thing that I did this time, and I'd not done it the previous times. And the most important thing was notes that I was making. Again, I came to know a forum, in fact, through Prajit's article. I was just surfing through the internet, looking at motivational articles here and there, and I came across Prajit's story, and I read it. And he'd gone very elaborately discussing as to how notes can be made, how they are to be organized, and I did it exactly like he had said. He had spoken in his article. So again, what I was doing was, this is particularly relevant for GS2 and GS3. Whatever was in news, say something about the CBI or something about parliamentary secretaries, whatever was in news, I would pick it up, then go back to my static sources. To dig information about those articles. What are the problems there? What exactly are those articles? Have there been recommendations about them? I would collect information about it, arrange it, and keep it with me. And all these things I revised at the last minute. During the last 1 month, I kept revising them again and again. Another very important thing was data bank that my mentor had specifically asked me to prepare. I'd collected a lot of data, but I'd not put it at one place. So he made it a point that I create a bank specifically for data. So all the data that I had from various sources, you know, some gender report, some study by RSOC, whatever data I had from wherever, I put it at one place, and I would go through it every morning like my mentors had told me. So while writing my answers, all these were helpful, and data particularly is helpful because whenever you're making an argument, and if you can put a data there, say for instance, if you're talking about India's health scenario in a question and you say that we don't have quality doctors, and just leave it at that, it doesn't help. If you mention that WHO's report says that India doesn't have this, that this percentage of doctors in India do not have adequate qualifications, that is concrete. And so all that data was helpful in framing my answers like this. So I think this is all. These were the changes that I'd made this time, and I think these were of help. This is pretty much what I did. And here I would close. Yeah, so for my interview, again, the first time I faced the interview, like I said earlier, I was pretty, a little casual, in fact, about it. I thought an interview is going to go just the way it is going to go. I can't do much about my personality or my way of thinking, so I'm just going to go like that. There's nothing for me to prepare, really. And I didn't enter the boardroom with a lot of confidence. and I was really nervous, and I wanted to shirk off all the questions that were coming to me. So telling them I don't know, or giving a very brief answer was my approach the first time. It didn't really fetch me marks. This time around, I came here, and so I came down and spoke to ForumIAS members, and they'd given me certain inputs. They told me in detail that they'd actually conducted sessions here telling how DAF should be prepared. Again, very concretely, very specifically, not just vaguely enough telling you that, you need to prepare your DAF and everything is going to be from your DAF. No, that's not how they did it. They were very detailed in that session, and I sort of went back home to my place in Ludhiana and did exactly like that. I collected all information that I could on my background, and made notes from it. And I'm not saying that all this information stays with you. You'll be able to retain it by the day of the interview. In fact, it sort of creates a pressure, because there's too much to remember. But doing all that, making notes like they'd asked me to do. In fact, they'd asked me to write down questions, write down answers. Doing that brings a lot of confidence in you. I'm not saying that you'll be able to answer those questions when they come to you in the exact manner as you'd written in your notes, or that you will perhaps be asked those questions that you were expecting. But you'll at least walk into the boardroom with a lot of confidence in you, and that will make a lot of difference, trust me. So that is what I had done. I made questions, I made answers, and I gave mocks here, whatever feedbacks. Yes, yes. So there was this one time when Vaibhav Srivastav, who'd scored first rank in Indian Forest Services paper, was in the center at Forum, and I happened to be there at the same time as well. So we sat and we were discussing how his interview went and how to prepare for interviews, and he told me about his strategies for technical aspect. He was also an engineer, so was I, although in a different trade. But I noted all that down. He told me, so for my technical background, what I did was whatever had been in news of late, I researched into all those areas in depth and saw if they could connect to my engineering basics that I had done about, 2011 I graduated, so about 7 years ago. So all those interconnections I'd drawn, and I'd written down questions again and written down answers. I'm not saying that I was asked all those questions and I could answer all that. I was not asked questions there, but I walked in with a lot of confidence, knowing that in case something is asked about me from my DAF, I'll be able to handle it because I was prepared. So that was about my interview strategy. Thank you, everyone, and I wish you all best of luck. I wish that you all get cracking and make it to the final list, get the services you want, and do well. Thank you.